right across the street was a crack house.
Seriously?
Right. So directly across the street from me was a crack house, and
Wow.
I was basically living on a street that was crack infested.
Mm.
Now that same morning, my introduction to Miami was a neighbor. The neighbor to my right and the neighbor to my left is having an altercation. And both of them are shooting at each other through my backyard
On day one.
on day one. That's it. I woke up to this.
Yo.
And I'm at the door. I'm fascinated, not even knowing the danger, that I could have been in at the time. I'm at the door and I'm watching one guy in the car with a rifle, like he had like a 22 rifle behind shooting, and I'm watching the other guy shooting like he had a revolver.
Oh my God.
Shooting. So that was day one.
And how old were you then?
8.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm 8 years old at that point.
Wow.
Watch out, boom shot. You tell him say there is a make weight and Merman now. So this one here short shot. You can't stop. Boom shot.
Boom shots.
You're working on a project now. The last album we heard was Radio.
It was radio a while back.
Yeah. So what can you tell us about the new music?
Working on a current project. It's definitely reggae driven with the undertones of some hip hop,
Mm-hmm.
but you definitely hear the roots. It's undeniable. Very excited about the project. Very excited about the project. I definitely think it's a couple notch above radio, which is for me is great because always very critical of myself and my work. So I was saying to a friend the other day, for me to get to the point where I am meeting or getting towards satisfaction is a good thing, and I put a lot of work into it. Been here in New York recording some of the tracks, and looking forward to getting it out soon.
Well, I've always appreciated that you put your music together with a unique kind of fusion of sounds. It's not all, like you say, it's reggae is in there, but there's a lot of other influences.
Yes.
And I guess that comes from your upbringing, right? I mean, you spent a lot of time in...
Yeah, I was pretty much raised in Miami.
Miami, right.
So
okay.
you end up in that melting pot of cultures, and from your salsa to your reggae to your rock and roll to your hip hop to your Haitian influenced music. So just been in that melting pot, and then for me being not just a lover but also a student of music, and not being afraid to push boundaries, and not being afraid to want to create something that is within what's going on, but still you're like a patch of land,
Mm-hmm.
wherein my thing is always, when you hear Kimani, you're supposed to know right off back, oh yeah, Kimani that.
Right.
Yeah, I don't want you to feel wonder, well, which one this, which one that, and then, for me, in order to be great, then you within staying in the guidelines, you can't come and do what someone did already,
Mm-hmm.
So, you can't come back and meet Usain Bolt the same time, and be
Right.
great, because him do it. So, in order to
Right.
be great, you have to beat that time. So, you have to be somewhat different. So, for me, it's, just carving out my own little spot, and trying to find greatness within doing so.
Yes. And without worrying about living up to someone else's...
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
Like I say, it's really just to stay within the legacy.
Yeah.
It's just to stay within the barriers of what the legacy speaks about. But you know me. You know me from a while now, Ken. So so I'm not afraid to push the envelope. I'm not afraid to speak what's on my mind, because at the end of the day, it's me. And it's very important that I'm true to myself. Now, while being true to myself, can I do things that are wrong? Yeah. And if I do something wrong, me come back and apologize. But at that given moment, I'm being true to me and my emotions and how I feel. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Right.
it is what it is.
You just move forward.
Just like that.
Yeah.
No
doubt
other
about
way.
it. So, I mean, for people that enjoy, hip hop music, a lot of that is about, the realness behind the stories and things. Now, you've lived some real things too. I mean, I
Yes.
think people probably, when you hear, oh, it was Bob Marley's son, he must have been eating off a silver spoon his whole life and things like that. But I mean,
Total
just give us a
opposite.
sense, like what was that life like for you?
For me, well, first of all, it was it was a drastic change from coming from Falmouth, Jamaica, where it's a countryside where everyone knew everyone, where, you know what I mean, that the freedom of me being able to, as a child, to walk out my home and walk up to, like you say, go uptown and then walk downtown and have no cares or not worrying about everything, because every house you pass was basically a family member.
Mm.
And even though not, but just that unity within the countryside, and then being rooted up out of that now and coming to America now, mind you, when I learned about the opportunity of coming to America as a child, very excited.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Right.
America, I already envisioned what the house looked like, and the kitchen, I saw the dogs and the picket fence, I saw it all in my imagination. And then I still remember the night coming in over Miami and just looking down at all the lights. We come from a country, you probably find one light pole every 10 miles or 20 miles. So I ain't see much lights growing up.
Gotcha.
Coming over and just seeing all the lights, I'm like, yeah, this is heaven. So I remember we landed, the night, and we took a cab. We went to where I would be staying, which was my grandmother's house at the time. And in the night, it was very dark, so we were going in the night, not really paying attention to the outside. But the first thing I realized was, all right, this is not the house that was in my imagination. But all right. And then, just waking up that next morning, to realize the state that I was in and where I was coming from this was supposed to be better. But it's not. You know what I mean? So I woke up to right across the street was a crack house.
Seriously?
Right. So directly across the street from me was a crack house, and I was basically living on a street that was crack infested. Now that same morning, my introduction to Miami was a neighbor to my right and the neighbor to my left is having an altercation, and both of them are shooting at each other through my backyard.
On day one.
On day one. That's when I woke up to this.
Yeah.
And I'm at the door. I'm fascinated, not even knowing the danger, that I could have been in at the time. I'm at the door and I'm watching one guy in a car with a rifle, like he had like a .22 rifle behind shooting, and I'm watching the other guy shooting like he had a revolver.
Oh my God.
Shooting. So that was day one.
And how old were you then?
8.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm 8 years old at that point.
Wow.
And, but and then I guess when you're placed into a situation like that, and that is what it is and what it will be, then you have to adjust and you adapt, and you're going into survival mode. So I'm coming from freedom to where now I'm hearing about kids getting kidnapped. Like I had no idea what that was. What do you mean people are stealing kids? So I had a bunch of other things to not worry about. And then, we went through that and for a while, and me myself got into some trouble. And, I think for quite some while I was a little bitter, knowing, where we're coming from, and then being in the current condition and state that I was living in. And, so we lash out, didn't grow with any father. My mother was a very, 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 very strong woman, and she played the role of mother and father very well. But, as a child growing up, for me as a boy, well, my mother could never be my father.
Right.
So we start to find our father figures within our friends. You know what I mean? So we start to do things to basically to impress each other, and you grow from that. But for me, looking back at it, at the time going through it was very, like I said, was a very rough time, and had lot of very bitter moments. But now reflecting on it, and given the opportunity to do it again, knowing what I went through, I would do it again.
You wouldn't change a thing?
I wouldn't change a thing.
Wow.
because I think that's what kind of, for me, kept me grounded. You know what I mean? Kept me in tune with life. You know what I mean? And the realness of what the everyday struggle is. So unless you experience that firsthand, you don't know. And I say, for me, that's why it's so hard. Like I have I'm one that want to save the world. So I'm one that everybody that I pass in need, I want to help, because I've been to that point of wanting somebody to help me, wanting somebody to help us, and knowing what it is not to have that help. So for me, have been given the opportunity to be able to extend the hand is you know, that's what it's about for me. And I think that if I was raised in a different situation, having it all, then I wouldn't be so in tune and so in touch with what reality really is.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, so the music piece of it came much later?
Music piece came much later because, you know, growing up, music was the furthest thing from my mind.
Okay.
You know, music for me was like everyone else. It was a shower time thing. So, yeah, the concert started when the shower started, and it end the minute the shower ends. So, you know, and then it you know, it's a funny situation. I started basically as a fool playing around, and this Carl Peterson, a producer, heard me and told me I had a nice tone. I think, you know, I should visit the studio every now and again, and I started going there on the weekends, once a week on the weekend. And one of the early songs I wrote was Dear Dad.
Yeah. I remember.
And then, you know, when I got the response from Dear Dad and realized that, you know, I was capable of making music to touch people, then that became, you know, something that I know that with this blessing, then I have to make the best of it.
Yeah.
And this would be, you know, I didn't choose my destiny, but it was predestined to be.
Well, I know that there's going to be a lot of realness in this new music that we hear, because the track record speaks for itself. Thank you so much, Kamal.
Pleasure, man. Always a pleasure.
Blessings.
Yes, brother.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.